The eyeliner, the echo of fashion. British bands are, above all, groups. They're only incidentally musicians. The music serves as a pretext for making things together and making things resound together. Things rather than sounds, they are a prelude to armed groups. In their feedback effects and amplifiers and screams, in personal effects, in everything surrounding their music, is the premonition of a splendid storm, a destruction shrouded in beauty. Megaphones, they shout through them, long locks, black sunglasses, boots, leather gloves, dog collars, synthesized sounds, groups of 5. In some military operations, 5 soldiers enable a formation called a main, or hand. What might be considered a style is the premonition of street fighters armed from head to toe. The bourgeoisie weren't wrong. They reacted far more violently to all this than they would to a new style that was merely cultural. All these accessories, like the cover girl's white makeup in Winter '66, prophesying the dotted outlines of a violent struggle, were, in a way, themselves already a violent struggle. History has so many preludes that don't look like anything. Quirky way of dancing sometimes. Yes, here it advanced as a dance, on dove's feet. Flowers of decomposition, suggestions of something else, a style that fragmentarily suggests another world, and some instruments with which to get there. The echoes of that world are gathered back together elsewhere. Here, London, this style and this lifestyle seem to be wholly self-contained. Finished products, frosty marvels, shuttered gazes, and people who pay them no attention, who don't have the means to do so, even though they were probably their inspiration. Pop fashions came from the suburbs, will fare best, perhaps, in amplifying certain echoes in the most violent way. Like an avalanche, unaffected by he who screamed and carelessly set sound waves moving, and in also being their point of arrival. No, it's not a matter of arrival, but rather a revival. In other countries, in a slightly dissimilar way, perhaps in another sphere entirely, although there's no other sphere, there's only this one, here and now and at all times, a sphere where everything is exchanged and where everything changes. Styles pass, and things themselves, they're no longer recognizable. They were so soft, so at home. Style, the mercantile style of connecting in an industry, the game and parade a society puts on, can end up presaging the death thereof. These groups make us hear electricity. They dress themselves up magnificently for that, or rather, that dresses them up magnificently. It is not they we hear, who we come to hear. It's the electricity, the velvet, the storm, 5,000 people looking more and more like them at ever-increasing speeds, who will now be unable to bear their daily life, and who will copy both their lyricism and their witticisms. London, 1968, the Roundhouse. It's set in a British working-class neighborhood, an old shut-down engine shed. There are still railroad tracks, girders, switches, railway signals, fences, braziers, and gleams from far-off acetylene lamps. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the best British groups come through. Pink Floyd in a huge brick room, doubtless a former warehouse, in front of a huge mirror. Its only decoration, slowly and unhurriedly doing their hair in front of 3 or 4 girls, and various people, groupies with very white skin and very black eyelids who never smile. They do their hair solemnly. I'm trying to pick an example. I have a vision of a matador grooming himself before his paseo in front of Ava Gardner. I muse on the high priest of ancient Egypt preparing unguents for the dead, on how meticulousness cloaks death here and there, on a funereal slowness, the funereal slowness of these 4 young men doing their hair, of these young girls' eyes seemingly transfixed upon the combs, a slowness not intended in preparation for a post-graveyard luncheon, and yet, but as with all examples, these are wrong. It is impossible, as they do their hair, to forget the locomotive right next to them, to forget the industrial decor, neon, factory smoke visible at the end of the hallway. Suddenly it occurs to me that these girls must have smudged some charcoal around their eyes, an old chunk of coal found just outside. When they're playing, the 4 members of Pink Floyd look like, well, like 4 electrical engineers trying out and toying with complicated machines. They press a button, lower a lever, deliberately and unexcitedly pull a cord, act like they're setting it up for the next group, but no, it's for themselves. And it's only for that purpose that they're now meticulously doing their hair, as morticians prepare the dead to make us hear electricity. One day, young women with black eyes, white skin, and faded clothes will calmly, attentively watch electricity board and gas workers doing their hair before leaving for work, and then they'll watch them work. They absolutely won't use their devices or this electricity to tell us what they feel. On the contrary, they serve these devices and their noises. A machine's mere accessories operating them is simple, straightforward, easy to understand. They're merely conduits through which this electricity can reach us. This electricity in its silent, stormy roar. And certainly words as well, flourishes for electricity that hardly belong any more to them than to the rest of us. All this time in the roundhouse, fabulously elegant, very young boys and girls circulate. The details differentiating each of them don't really matter. I prefer their shared indifference. The miserable genius of each one of them can go right into the trash. What is inimitable is uninteresting. Mediums laugh at genius. They, with their awkward gestures, their blank gazes, just stammer out a mimicry of what things tell them, and absent-mindedly wear any and all sumptuous rags that have been blindly flung on their shoulders. Whose words are they singing without any real belief? Nobody's. Out there in the dwindling night, set ablaze by bluish signs, Siemens control data, Bull, IBM, Coca-Cola. The Highgate Cemetery is not far off. Worms must be crawling among what had once been the rotting remains of Karl Marx.